Hey guys, what's up? It's Alberto at Rev Engine here. Hope you guys are doing great. Today we're going to talk about accessing decision makers. The training is going to be 30-minute long. We're going to talk about the importance of accessing decision makers, how to spot them, how to access them, and how to gauge their attitude towards your project. If you have any specific questions, anything you'd like to ask, any comments, just drop them in the comment section down below, either now or later if you're watching the recording. If you do stay until the end of the session, I will be sharing with you a tool that you can start implementing today for free to help you access decision makers and really go from a place where you're selling or potentially selling to someone who can't buy to selling to the people who actually can make the project happen. Before we go there, I wanted to tell you about the context in which we're discussing this topic. So as you probably know by now, we've built a 9-step program, having worked in technology sales for longer than I can remember, and having helped vendors grow and build high performance sales teams over the last 3 years. We basically used all of that knowledge, tools, techniques to put this program together. And the program is basically aimed at helping technology vendors, growing technology vendors, go from a place where sales performance isn't what it needs to be to a place where sales performance is predictable. Yeah, where they know the type of activities that they need to be doing to drive a certain amount of sales. And this is important if you want to plan for growth, if you want to grow, or if you want to get funding and investment. A very interesting use case so the three key use cases or applications for this program are: one, if you are selling yourself and you need to streamline how you're selling. If you're planning to hire a salesperson, you will need to equip them with a playbook. So this is it. Or third, if you already have a team and you want to improve the performance of that team as a manager, you want to help them be more laser focused on driving sales in 90 days or less. And so we're going to be focusing on step 4 of this program today. But basically, what this program covers is, putting in place certain things that you need to put in place to be able to drive sales, increase sales in 90 days or less. So typically, what tends to happen is salespeople or tech organizations, they don't have a clear goal. They don't really know, they're working really hard, but maybe not on the right things, maybe not selling to the people who have the biggest need for their solution, or they're working on prospects that aren't qualified for many reasons, either because they prefer a different solution to yours, or you're not talking to decision makers, or there's no value for them in moving forward, or there isn't a plan yet. There isn't a plan for you to work with them on actually help them uh, make an informed decision, which means a lot of effort on your part and deals rolling down, and months, weeks passing by, and more demands, more hoops to jump through, and no sales, right? And effectively, all of this is also happening. The main reason why there isn't an improvement in sales performance is because there isn't a process. Yeah, there isn't a process where you know exactly what you need to do at each step of the sales cycle, how to do those things, and you don't have a crystal clear vision as a salesperson on what is the next first, where those opportunities are, should they be in your pipeline in the first place, and second, what is it that you can do on a weekly basis to progress those opportunities? What's your next step and how you're going to get there? And having some analytics and automation and systems in place to help you become better at doing that. So by doing those things, effectively you go from a place where sales performance isn't what it needs to be, even though you might be closing big deals every now and then, to a place where okay, you know, if you focus on these activities and these companies and you qualify in this fashion and you focus on these next steps with each one of those opportunities, then you know you'll close more deals later down the line, right? And this tends to happen in 90 days or less. So, um, right. So let's talk a little bit about the matter at hand, which is access decision makers. So I'll tell you what happened to me in the past. So I used to suck at sales, right? I I started selling crazy technology products 20 years ago in a very small town in Spain where people thought I was crazy. And then I went on selling toilet paper for Kimberly Clark, and that wasn't exciting either. And after that, I worked for Gartner and small tech startups and large cloud organizations, and always as a top performer. But what I used to do is I was prospecting so hard and I was calling on people, and when somebody finally showed interest in wanting to talk to me about those things, I almost didn't believe it. And I was so grateful that I just would give those people my time, whatever they asked from me. And so I really thought it was rude or inappropriate to ask those people whether they were the decision makers or not, simply because, hey, they want to talk to me, they work for a large organization, so surely they can buy or they will buy. So that's one of the issues. Second issue I faced is I was getting kind of tricked sometimes by these people into thinking that they were the decision maker. And and sometimes they would do this knowingly and willingly. They would say, yes, I am the decision maker, I've been appointed with this task, knowing that that wasn't actually the case. And sometimes they thought they were the decision makers when they actually weren't, right? So this is especially true if you work on a sexy industry. Back in the day was social media. Now it's probably artificial intelligence, machine learning. If you are working on any of those spaces, everybody will want to talk to you about that, but they'll have no clue why, right? So what would happen to me when I was selling social media monitoring and analytics a few years ago is that everybody thought they could change the world in their organization. When in reality they had no power and nobody had asked them to do anything, right? So I would spend weeks sometimes trying to help them build these crazy business cases that nobody had even requested, they had no power to buy, and so on. And sometimes they knew that was the case, and sometimes they thought they were actually the decision makers. So for instance, when I was selling to technology CEOs in Gartner, I was selling to the freaking CEO, and they would be like, yes, of course, I'm the decision maker. And at the end of the sales cycle, they would be like, I need to pitch it to my I need to present it to my to the board, right? And then you were like, damn. And that caused all sort of complications because the board had never heard from this in the past. They never requested it, and so they started asking other things, having doubts in mind, and oftentimes it wouldn't go anywhere. So that's another problem. And finally, there is a possibility that you probably were, even if you were brave enough to ask whether they were the decision makers or not, and maybe you understood and spotted that they weren't. Those guys wouldn't let me talk to the decision makers. They just wouldn't do it. They wouldn't trust me. They for different reasons they wouldn't let me talk to the decision makers. And so I was helping prepare these business cases and proposals that guys had no clue how to deliver to their bosses, and probably were flawed in the first place because we were working towards the problem that my contact thought they had, which wasn't the real problem that decision maker had. Right. So, for instance, in social media monitoring, my guys would be like, oh, I really need to monitor my likes and see my reach and my tweets and my comments and whatnot. Oftentimes, decision makers didn't care about that. When we presented to them, they cared about what the competition was doing, what messaging were they using that was differentiated, how would that help drive more leads through the website, and things like that, right? Basically, how does this impact the bottom line? And so the problem with all of this is that I would spend a lot of time building a solution, presentation, proposal, a business case, whatever you call it, based on the idea of the solution that someone had who wasn't the actual decision maker. And this is risky. Oftentimes, I would build the same proposals when there actually wasn't a need because decision makers hadn't asked for it in the first place. So they were like, okay, sounds good, but not a priority, move on. Right? So the outcome was not a priority, move on, or yeah, it's a priority, but this is not what we need. We need something else. And we've been talking to this company, this other vendor, this competitor who got it, right? Because I was losing to competitors who had access to decision makers, whereas I was trying to convince the people down below. So that happened to me in the past, happens to the best of us. The problem is if you continue to do that for long enough, you will be wasting time, you'll get frustrated, you'll be working for free, and you'll get no ROI. And that's going to have a knock-on effect on your business, on your mental health, and many aspects. So quickly in the comments, let me know if this is something that you've seen someone do in the past, if this has happened to you before, and what were some of the strategies that you put in place to alleviate these issues. So those are the problems, but there's also a possibility, right? There is a possibility, there is a world, another side of the coin where you know the different type of roles that there are out there, right? So for instance, I would get to a point where I understood when I was selling social that some of the guys were in charge of engagement, so they will care about these, but then I understood that there were other guys that I needed to talk to, sponsors, decision makers, detractors, and whatnot. So you kind of start mapping those out. And also where you understand how to gauge the attitude of those different people towards your solution. And I would, you know, draw a map of these different decision makers and put a smiley face if they wanted what I was presenting, a sad face if they were against it, or indifferent if they didn't really care. And that kind of gave me a better idea of where I was in those organizations, whether there was any point in trying to pursue those smile, angry faces or sad faces, or whether I had to move on. And also started learning and researching into some of the techniques that you can use to access decision makers when you know you're not talking to one. Yeah, and there's certain different things that I would do, right? So you could do it like, hey, this is the way we do it, you want it or not. Or if you think that it makes sense, you could try and negotiate, hey, if I give you this, if I help you prepare this proposal, will you help me present it with you with decision to the decision makers and so on. And so these were things that I learned and that I put in place, and this all of a sudden helped me take control of my time. It really helped me invest my time in building business cases, solutions, proposals that were more likely to lead to a purchase because I was talking with the right keywords, with about the right things to the right people, and it was a priority. And as a consequence, this massively increased my conversion rate and my sales effectiveness. So you might be thinking, yes, this is all well and good, but how on earth do I do that? Right? And it's quite simple. It's 3 steps that you need to do. We talked, kind of alluded to those things before already. So I'm going to quickly fly through those things. And if you decide to stay, yeah. So what I'm going to do now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to tell you about the three things that you need to do in order to access decision makers and mitigate this risk and solve the problems that I discussed before. And then towards the end, I will show you a tool that we put together that you can download and start using now for free to help you stop selling to people who can't buy and start selling to those who have the power to make things happen, right? So I'll do that with you if you decide to stay till the end of the program, to the end of the course. So let's have a quick look at those three things. First of all, we need to identify, right? So who are the people involved in the decision making process? Do you know? And there is a question that you really need to ask yourself in these three checks. There is this reality check, right? This reality check that you need to go through to really understand and gauge if you are indeed talking and accessing decision makers. So the first thing you need to do is identify who are they. Do you know? And the question that you need to answer yes or no, very honestly, is do you know the different type of stakeholders and who's going to make the decision, right? Guys, if you really don't know that, like if you don't know who the decision makers are going to be and the different roles playing in that organization, if you haven't done your work, if you haven't done your research, you're gambling, and then you are at risk of selling to the wrong people. So the first thing to do is identify them. Then what we need to do is to access those people, right? And the question that you need to answer very honestly here is, do you have access? And if you don't have access, your job is to actually understand the techniques that you could leverage to access the different decision makers once you have identified those people. And we're going to talk about those in a second. And so the third thing that we need to do, that you need to do, is gauge. You need to gauge the attitude towards the project. Are they favorable? Are they indifferent? Are they completely against it? Because that's gonna allow you to answer a very important question that's going to be key for you to qualify this opportunity, which is, are all stakeholders on board with the project? Yeah. So by doing these three things, identify, access, and gauge, and by answering these questions, by answering yes to these three questions, do you know the different type of stakeholders and who's going to make the decision? Do you have access to those people? And are they on board? Are all of them on board with the project? You get magic happens. And that's truly when you get all stakeholders on board with the project. Right, so I hear you ask, this is all well and good, this is fantastic, how on earth do I do that? Well, I'm really glad you asked, because what we put together is a tool that you can download at the end of this session. Yeah. So guys, there is this tool that we put in place, that we put together, and it's based on the Checklist Manifesto, right? You might have read the book in the past, and the Checklist Manifesto basically talks about how surgeons manage to decrease mortality by 50% just by implementing an easy checklist. Is this the right patient? Am I operating the right leg? And so on. Now, if surgeons who study how many years, God knows how many years, and they have so much experience and get paid well, they still make mistakes, silly mistakes that kill people, is it possible that you could be making those mistakes and killing some deals? I say yes. So what we put together is a checklist that you can use, start leveraging now to stop killing those deals. And that's something that we're going to share down below in the comment section after this program. And basically, this is what the tool looks like. It's it's a four-step qualification checklist. And those four steps is basically align problems and solutions, uncover value, access decision makers, and building the mutual plan. Now you might say, hey, I've seen that before. Of course you have, because that in fact is some of the steps that we cover in our revenue engine builder program. Effectively, this would be step 4. So let's have a look at that step 4, shall we? And let's see what you get there, right? So we're looking for access decision makers. As you can see, there's a bunch of information that's super useful for you to have in a sales process. And the problem is, some sales managers, they hire salespeople and they don't even give them this. And they expect them to do their work properly, and they expect them not to quit. Right, okay, so we're getting there. Apologies, the lag is a little bit big. It's a bit of lag here, so hopefully we'll get there. Right, okay, here we are. Access decision makers. So in this module, basically what you get, guys, what you get in this module is a step-by-step explanation of what I just described before. It's a how-to guide with explanations, how to do things, sample questions, examples that are, kind of easy to grasp. And then you get the checklist with the things that you need to answer yes to in order to qualify that deal or not. And this is going to be great. Hopefully, it's going to be useful, hopefully, for you out of the box. But ideally, this should be customized to your reality. And that's exactly what we do in the Revenue Engine, the Revenue Builder program. So we do this in a few weeks. We fly through these steps in 9 weeks, and then the rest of the time we're selling, we're making things happen, and I'll support you myself directly in closing those deals. But okay, let's go to the access decision makers material. So this is what you're gonna get in this module. This is the importance, and then we start getting into the meat of things. Capturing attitude and influence of different stakeholders. So what are the different stakeholders that you could have in there? You have the decision maker, the person whose project cannot proceed without their consent. The sponsor, someone who's capable of driving the decision making process and aligning all the decision makers around their preferred option, right? Typically the person we sell to in complex B2B deals. But if we don't get access to decision makers, we could be in trouble. Key contributors, sometimes, someone who's a key member of the core decision group, but they're not deciding nor have the power to push and to bring the right people on board. Validators or blockers, influencers. So if you're just trying to sell to anyone that picks up the phone to you guys, it's gonna be risky, right? It's gonna be problematic. And look, I'm not saying this is easy, that you're always gonna get it right, but at least if you've dedicated some thought to understanding this and you've done some homework and mapped out these different type of personas to your organization, then you have a fighting chance. One of my clients, they when they came to us, they'd been working on opportunities for over a year that they actually lost, uh, because of this, because they were selling to the wrong person, and then at the very end of the process, there was all these new stakeholders who came on board, and we kind of had to start from scratch again. And in one of the particular examples, we kind of lost the project, and my client lost the deal because they were already building a solution internally that did that. So, and their stakeholder, the validator, the influencer they were talking to, they didn't even have a clue that project was in place. So risky business, guys, if you don't know this. So then you need to kind of understand how influential they are. Are they do they have decisive influence, or significant, or minor? And then you need to kind of gauge how convinced they are, right? So they're very positive about your stuff, or unbiased, they don't care, or even hostile. Now, if you have a decisive influencer who's very hostile against your solution, you don't want to find that out at the end of the sales process. You want to be able to spot that as quickly as possible, right? And finally, some of the strategies for accessing decision makers, right? So I described before that sometimes you don't know if you are talking to the decision maker, or indeed you do know, but the person you're talking to, they refuse to put you in touch with the decision maker. So here are some of the strategies that you can use, some of the strategies that are leveraged in the industry to help you talk to the right people, such as modus operandi, like this is what we do, is our way, or the highway, or planned access. When we get to this point, the proposal, we need the decision maker on board. Or bargaining, if I give you this, you give me that. Or campaigning, you just email everyone in the organization and kind of invite them to the meetings. To finally, referrals or intros. When you have a referral or intro, that's pretty strong, right? When a decision maker knows someone who's benefited from your solution in the past, that's the best way to access them. Right, so in the guide, you also get some sample questions, things that you can use, the type of questions that you can ask, and finally the checklist that I mentioned. And by answering this checklist very honestly, something really important happens, guys. So first of all, you understand your pipeline. Yeah, if you answer anything other than yes to those questions, then maybe those opportunities shouldn't be there. And if you answer anything other than yes, but you can change things around, that that is the area of focus that you need to have. If you know that there are 3 opportunities in your pipeline where you can't access the decision maker, you know that the objective for you of this week needs to be devising strategies, negotiating whatever strategy you use with your contact to help you access decision makers now or in the future if it's planned. And all of a sudden, manage as a salesperson, it's easier for you to understand where your deals are and what is it that you need to be working on this week to progress this deal. As a manager, you understand what your team needs to be doing on a weekly basis and you can best support them. And also forecasting gets improved because you can suddenly allocate a percentage of success to completing that checklist, to saying yes to all of those questions. And so you can be honest about your pipeline, and that brings all sorts of benefits, for you if you're growing a business or if you're looking for funds and whatnot. Right. So guys, this is everything that we have for today. I see no questions. If you have any questions, if you've liked this, you know, show me some love in the comments. Ask questions if you want. That really motivates me to keep going in doing these things, and hopefully it's valuable. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll catch you later. Take care.